Hello everybody, thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe and comment, and also do check out the description below for a variety of other links. Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus was born on the 31st of August 12 AD in the town of Antium, south of Rome. His life would be a short one, as he was murdered at the age of just 28. But this man, for better or for worse, would leave an indelible imprint on history. He is better known as Caligula, and this is the story of one of Rome's most infamous emperors. He became known as Caligula as he spent much of his childhood in and around the army, as his father, Germanicus, was a general. The name Caligula literally means little boots, and it refers to a joke made by the Roman soldiers about him. As he grew older, Caligula grew to hate this nickname. Unfortunately for him, though, it stuck. According to the Roman historian Suetonius, this may well have been given to the young boy by the battle-hardened soldiers out of respect and affection. Trouble and uprisings were never far away in the Roman army, but any time they threatened a violent revolt, the sight of young Caligula eased their tensions. This may be an exaggeration on Suetonius's part, but there is probably some truth in the tale. At one stage, the soldiers were told that Caligula was going to be removed to a nearby city to protect him from their unreliable behaviour. This caused a great deal of protest amongst the men. The little Caligula had made his mark on them. Caligula's childhood was not an easy one. It included a huge number of his family members being murdered and a lot of difficult journeys for him, including travelling with his father to Syria. On his return, Caligula lived with his mother, but when she was sent into exile, he stayed with his grandmother and even his great-grandmother. Suetonius tells us that as Caligula grew towards manhood, his more unpleasant tendencies began to manifest themselves. He particularly enjoyed tortures and executions. Given some of the depravity that went on in ancient Rome, this is not a particular surprise. But he is also said to have been fond of other excesses, including food and behaviour of a sexual nature. In him, it's said that even the Emperor Tiberius saw a potentially dangerous man who could bring despair on Rome. Tiberius even refers to Caligula as a viper. In 37 AD, Tiberius died. Rumours circulated that Caligula was behind the emperor's death. If the old emperor had been suspicious of Caligula, although his will still named Caligula as co-emperor, the people of Rome, initially at least, were pleased with his accession. They were extremely fond of Caligula's father, Germanicus, and also felt some pity for Caligula, who had seen so many family members killed. Caligula, though, seems to have been fairly indifferent to his supposed misfortunes. So when he succeeded Tiberius, the opinions of the people were on his side. On his arrival in Rome, there were joyous scenes as people celebrated their new emperor. Tiberius's will was ignored. This had declared his grandson co-emperor alongside Caligula. Huge numbers of sacrifices were made in celebration, and it turned out to be quite the bloodbath. And it extended over a period of 3 months. Shortly after his accession, Caligula fell ill, and there was great anxiety for the new emperor. He recovered, and he made efforts to ensure his continuing popularity. He held a great funeral for Tiberius, at which he spoke causing many of the onlookers to weep at his words. Caligula ordered the return of all exiles, and he also dismissed charges that had been made during the reigns of earlier emperors. This continued to boost his public image. What could possibly go wrong? He held great banquets and gladiatorial fights, as well as games and chariot races that would last all day. He also ensured building projects that had been started by Tiberius were completed. As time went on, though, it soon became clear that Caligula's ego was steadily growing out of control. He began to see himself more as a god than an emperor. He was accused of incest with his 3 sisters, and even more disturbingly, this had started long before he became emperor, and even before he had reached manhood. He was also a man of very low principle. He was more than content to snatch men's wives and take them as his own. His treatment of his own wives, of which there were 4 during his lifetime, was also repugnant. His 4th wife he would parade naked for his friends' enjoyment, but he would not regard her as his wife until she had had a son. Soon after, the wider populace of Rome began to see this unpleasant side of Caligula, as he demonstrated utmost contempt for almost everybody, including the Senate. During the early days of his reign, during his illness that had nearly killed him, 2 men had made a very public promise that if the new emperor should live, then one of them would fight as a gladiator and the other would commit suicide. Having survived his illness and having heard of these promises, Caligula ensured both promises were carried out. This was a truly malicious man. Parents were forced to witness their own sons' executions, and Caligula's early fondness for watching executions and torture only strengthened with time. And his love of indulgences and excess also grew. He, according to Suetonius, made an advance on almost every woman in Rome, and appears to not have only been content with women either. His banquets, games, and sexual exploits came at a cost, however, and Caligula would find himself in dire straits financially. He always had unscrupulous means of getting himself out of trouble. However, with seizures of property through false accusations, illegal taxations, and auctions of properties that he had stolen. On his travels in other areas of the empire, like during a trip to Gaul, Caligula would also take his opportunities to raise further funds for his misdeeds by selling off stolen property and captured slaves. Caligula also started to pick a fight with the Roman army, which was a highly dangerous thing to do. He booted out soldiers whom he considered too old or not physically capable of fighting, and reduced many of the remaining soldiers' pensions. Apart from his brutality, there was also a comical and insecure nature to Caligula's personality. He was a man with very little hair on his head, but a lot of body hair. As such, he banned people from looking down at his bald head or discussing goats in front of him, fearful of being compared to one due to his hairy body. Eventually, Caligula's rule caught up with him, and after a reign of just under 4 years, he was brutally murdered. His reign had begun promisingly, appearing that he wanted to stay on the good side of the Roman population, but this appears to have merely been Caligula luring them into a false sense of security. His capability for lust, greed, debauchery, and downright cruelty had been visible in his personality since his early teens. Caligula was a vile man and an even worse emperor.